Guys, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you especially to our missionaries of joy who are watching live and are going to submit questions while I'm talking. Go ahead and just type your questions in, and I'll let you interrupt our conversation. Joined today by Father Mike Schmitz. Dude, thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, I'm kind of blown away with all that you have going on, that you took a 2.5-hour drive to come and hang out here.
No, it's a 5-hour drive total. Don't worry about it. I'm grateful. You took the trip to be here. Yeah, so I had a much shorter trip than you did.
Yeah, Father Mike texted me. He's like, my brother-in-law's school needs a speaker. Would you please go do it? You say yes to everything I've asked you to do ever, so I couldn't say no.
So because he told me that you said that, and then when you asked about this, I'm like, well, I have to say yes now. I can't just say no.
This is going to perpetuate forever.
Yeah, which is okay. I'm okay with that.
All right.
I'm happy. Also, give me an excuse to get here. It's just the happiest place on earth.
Yeah, we are in the Schmitz. We're in a happy corner of the Schmitz cabin. There's a lake outside that window because it's so beautiful. Listen, there's some stuff I want to dig into with you, and really to help people stay grounded. And I want to find out how you stay grounded, and how you stayed you, and how you've protected the thing that makes Father Mike. Because I've been watching your ministry for years before really many people knew you. You know, we were just speaking at youth conferences together, and you're the same guy, and I praise God for that. But you've had this is crazy. It's crazy to even say this. You've had 2 #1 podcasts, not one.
For briefly, and also
even briefly, it's completely insane.
And also not based off anything. I mean, reading the Bible. I mean, no, it's a big deal. But the reality, of course, is that people have a hunger for the word, and they have a hunger. I'm amazed by it, and I'm not trying to be like falsely modest about it.
Yeah.
But there is something about the content, right? Just being, this is eternal when it comes to God's word, and this is profound when it comes to the catechism. Yeah. And I think just people say, if you can help me have access to something eternal, if you can help me have access to something profound, then I think that's the key, right?
Yes.
That is. Yeah. So it's not like I have to be profound.
Yeah.
The word of God already is. The catechism already is. It's just, can you make it accessible for me? And that's like amazing. I got to be part of it.
I got to tell you though, I mean, awesome. There's a lot of people that have tried to make the word of God accessible who have not had a #1 podcast. I mean, like you're the Patrick Mahomes of of digital ministry, and not just in the Catholic world. Like, you beat Joel Osteen.
That's it. Thanks.
Which is the goal.
That's always the goal. Ever since I was young. Chris, you know what I say? I say, ever since I was a young boy.
It's been my goal.
I would say to the Lord,
beat Joel Osteen.
I need 2 things, Lord. I need a nice smile, and he gave me that. And then I need a good podcast, and he gave me that. That's my Joel Osteen impression.
That was perfect. You look like him too.
Well,
but the output, what people also don't see is that there's a lot of things that you do that no one even notices, right? Like, your total output's insane. So there's 2 daily podcasts. Yep. There's also a weekly podcast.
2 weekly podcasts.
2 weekly podcasts. Yeah. You're a campus ministry priest. You just drove 2.5 hours to come here and hang out with me. How much coffee do you drink?
There's a lot. This is just water.
Yeah, this is nice. Just water right
But
now.
on the way here, there was always,
How many cups a day?
So yesterday was a good day.
Is a good day a lot or a little?
No, a little.
Okay.
So yesterday was kind of
So you realize it's almost a problem.
Right, almost. I think I just like the taste. That's my issue.
I love the taste. Are you up to like 4 cups a day?
I think, so here's what happens.
8 cups a day?
No, that's crazy. That's crazy talk. I would say that, so I don't know how serious you want to get about this, because
I want to get serious about this because people want to know what's the juice behind a guy who's this successful at something.
There's one, like a day like yesterday would be, I had 1 full cup of coffee, like just maybe a little bit taller than this, and that was it. But there are times when I'm here, like it's summertime, and I'm here and hanging out, and we're making breakfast, and we're all hanging out, and someone keeps making coffee, and I'll keep going. I'll just refill it. And not because we have to get up if we're doing anything. It's just like, it's here, and you made another pot. Well, I remember my brother-in-law, the one you haven't met yet. He's going to be at the dinner. His name's Tanner. And at one point, he's like, "How much more coffee do you need?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't need any more. It's there. You guys keep making it. I'm going to keep filling this up." And so that could be a problem.
So I was wondering, like, you're not. I'm from New Jersey. I talk so fast.
Really?
I'm at events, and I live in Colorado now. But I'll be at events talking at a super high speed. And if I'm in Missouri, people are like, you lost me 5 minutes ago. But I've wondered, is the energy caffeine induced or just a natural?
I think that it is situationally induced.
Okay.
So, I mean, genuinely speaking, I think that there's an aspect where it's, okay, if this is something that it is really, really important that you hear this and understand it. Like if you, like, it's really important to me for me to communicate this. I think it's the circumstance that gets the heart rate going, because I can have coffee and be like, hey, okay. But it becomes like, if there's something to communicate, that's the thing. And that's one of the things too, like when it comes to speaking quickly, I know that there are some people who say that they get lost in it, but I can't tell you, I have a few pet peeves. One of my pet peeves is when someone is speaking so slowly
that I am predicting the next word.
Yep,
drives me out of my mind.
Finish the sentence for them, and I just think, just keep ahead of me. Just keep a little bit ahead of me, so I have to have to work. In fact, I think there's been some studies about like the ideal optimal pace of how many words per minute that
the human brain can hit about 500 or 400 words a minute,
something like this.
So you're probably only at like 220 at your typical podcast.
So I just want to make you work for it. I mean, not because I want to punish anyone. I want them to understand.
Yeah. Is your brain moving fast all the time? Because again, I wonder, are you the guy who your sweet spot is just, hey, someone give me my lane and I'll preach in it? Or is your brain always going to, when I think of the amount of things you do, are you constantly inventing the next thing that you could do?
So I know some people who are incredible. Like that you could just pull a thing out of a hat and say, talk about blah. Yeah. And they just would, and go. Yeah. I am constantly working on the next thing.
Are you?
But I have to sit down and like, I need to write it out. I need to think it out. I need to think it through. Or if I'm listening to something, I'm sure the same way. If I'm listening to something, I'm like, oh, that's okay. Remember this. Write this story down.
So your brain's never
always
off.
Going. Yeah, it was just a little bit. Maybe that's bad. It could be bad.
No, I'm like that too. It drives my wife crazy.
Yeah,
and I think if I didn't have a wife, it would be on crack like it is for you.
That's what I'm saying. It's like I wonder if I need more people to say like, hey,
calm down for a minute.
To the side. Just you don't have to think about it right now. And yet, I think that
it's funny. I think of like young influencers. They just think success will just come to them. I'll just hit record in a camera. But the amount of work, I'm surprised to hear that, because when I think of the amount of output, my presumption would be, oh, the guy just hits record and just starts going.
Yeah. No, it's
so, but all your inventive energy is not on what to do, but on what to say.
Yeah.
And you just keep in that zone.
That's a really good way to put it, because I think there are some people who are incredibly creative and have a lot of vision, like you do. You have a lot of vision where it's like, okay, what's the next platform? What's the next, not just thing to say, but what's the next way to get that out?
Yeah.
And how do you engage all the people who are part of
to a fault? I mean, I could spend over half my energy, whereas you're like, hey, I don't care if it looks sloppy and there's a fireplace behind me, and start talking.
Right.
And it's like, well, apparently that works.
That's it. But there is, people will. I would say that for a Sunday homily, I'll spend anywhere between 9 and 20 hours to get ready for that.
Thank you.
And I think it's...
Can I shake your hand on behalf of every Catholic who is just so tired of poorly thought out homilies?
Well, that's the thing. Is like, if I have the sense, and I'm in a mass, and I have the sense that you're figuring this out as you go.
Oh, come on. Like we all know, Father.
Yeah.
Like if you're Mother Teresa, go ahead and do that off the top of your head, and I'm enamored. But anybody else, like, please think first.
Yeah. And so one of the things we'll do is I'll do.
9 to 20 hours on your Sunday homily.
Sunday homily, yeah. And so then we'll do series of the homily series. And part of that is not only because I think that if this is a topic or a thing that's worth communicating, then it's worth really, really knowing. Like it's not just, okay, here's a 10-minute or 20-minute homily on this topic, but it's like, no, we're going to actually dive deeply into this over the next 3 to 6 weeks. But also, I have the sense that if I'm able to get up in front of the congregation and say, for the next 4 weeks, we're going to talk about this, that I'm inviting them along with me.
Wow, that's cool.
And that they would be able to say, okay, you have an idea of where you want us to go. You've thought this through, so I'm gonna trust you, that you're taking us somewhere, not just kind of like had a random
so you prepare
thought.
Series. So then I'm thinking, that's just your homily. That's half your week. And you have all the other output. How many hours a week are you working?
That's a good question. Most of them, I think most of them. I think that, which is not a bad thing. I think that there's an aspect where I'm in a place where there's freedom to do that.
Yeah, there's a blessing in celibacy.
Yeah,
not that you should work yourself to the bone.
And it's not that that's identity is the mission. Obviously that's not the case. But at the same time, there's like, well, if this is the opportunity right now, and this is the season, it's been kind of the season for the last number of years. So okay, then let's do our best and not just kind of. So this happened to me,
and don't complain about it. I feel bad for myf when I'm working too hard sometimes. Look at my wounds.
It happened about 2 years ago, two and a half years ago. It was I was going into weekend, so there was no school.
Yeah.
And I when I was going to the weekend, and my whatever the plan was fell through. I was gonna go fill in a parish. They're like, oh, we don't need you. But it was kind of too late to just put out, does anyone need any help this weekend?
Yeah.
And then I was going to come here, but no one was here. Like all my family was in parts unknown. So I thought, well, I'll just stay in Duluth. Now, before this, occasionally I would, on a Saturday, go down to a coffee shop and like, I'm scrambling to work. Like, what is it? Lord, I'm still working on this. I've been working on this all week, but I still don't know exactly what you want me to say.
So you stress out about this stuff too?
Tears, like almost every week.
Really?
Yeah.
Over the homily?
Over like, what do you want? God, what do you want me to say?
The amount of output.
No, like, God, what do you want me to say for the homily? Like, what is it that...
Wow.
In front of me, there's going to be students. Like, what is it that they need?
So if you go to a Duluth coffee shop, you will find Father Mike in tears.
In tears, right?
Over his Bible.
And I'd be looking around all these people on Saturday morning, and they're reading books, they're reading the newspaper, they're doing the crossword, and I'd have this jealousy of, oh man, it'd be so nice. That'd be nice to have a Saturday where you could just like
do
kick
nothing.
Back. So this weekend, all of a sudden, wait, I don't have a mass, and I don't have anything to do. I'm going to go down. I'm going to go to the coffee shop, and I'm going to do what I'm jealous of, So that weekend, I got to relax. I had a full Saturday, had a Sunday, a mass, so just whatever students are in town, come on over. And by the end of that Sunday night, I remember having this real clear thought of, God, this was a blessing. This was a gift.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to work.
Yeah.
Because there's a gift with also being entrusted with something. And that's I imagine for as a dad.
Well, I was going to say that for you is fatherhood. Right. That's like there's the virile power, the life-giving power you experience from yourself, and it's not addictive in a negative way. It's like I'm fulfilling. I'm a fish in water. This is what I do, and you got an expression of fatherhood that's beautiful. What are you doing with that amount of output though for self-care?
Yeah,
you work out a lot.
Well, a lot.
Yeah. More than I'm able to as a layman.
I work out at least once a day. I'll say.
Okay. How long?
1 hour.
1 hour once a day.
Once a day, and then now
cross training kind of stuff.
CrossFit.
Okay.
Yeah. So I really like that.
This episode was sponsored by CrossFit. Father Mike happily endorses CrossFit. No, go ahead, sorry.
No, it's great. Because I used to do a lot of endurance stuff.
Okay.
And had some injuries. And maybe it was 5 years ago. I remember thinking, wow, I was lifting up. We have our chapel is a 2-car garage that we've converted into a daily mass chapel.
And you're fundraising to build a chapel.
Yeah.
He's fundraising to build a chapel. Where do they go for that? Honestly,
so bulldogcatholic.org.
Bulldogcatholic.org. Support Father Mike if you love him and he blesses you. Go ahead.
Great.
Yeah.
And so I was lifting up the podium, just a little, because we have to shift it, pull it out to stand behind it, and then put it back. I remember picking it up to put it back. I was like, oh, this is heavy. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've not been this weak since I was 15 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And so then I'm like, I need to start working out. I need to start lifting weights.
Yeah.
And so then my sister that you met and brother-in-law and my brother who's in the military, they've been doing CrossFit stuff for 15 years now. And so I was like, fine, I'll bite the bullet. And I did it and love it.
It's awesome.
It's awesome, yeah.
Oh yeah. So you got a little bit of coffee. You got a little bit of rest time, a little
prayer,
bit of
obviously, is the...
Yep, and your family. I love seeing you in your natural habitat. Like as soon as you walk in and your brother-in-law is there and your sister's there, and there's like a deeper level of relaxed Father Mike.
Oh, for sure.
Like, it just brings it right out. How often are you talking to your family to keep you grounded?
Talking, or in communication?
Yeah,
so
both.
we'll text all the time.
Okay.
So the family group text and calling each other, that's been a big thing. I wish it was more.
Yeah.
I'm not very good. It's my fault. Like they'll reach out. They'll call. I'm like, oh shoot, I can't answer right now. That kind of thing, which is bad. What? It's that. I'm busted. It's like a confession right now. All of a sudden. Yeah. But in the summertime and in break times is if I have a chance to go anywhere, I'll come here. And so, during the winter or during the school year, so 3 of my sisters moved back to my hometown.
Yeah.
And so up until my mom passed away this last February.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
And so I just come back here and I get to see my mom and dad and my 3 sisters and brothers-in-law and the nieces and nephews, which is really great. Now I get to come back and see my dad and
beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about the extraordinary amount of success when you hit the number one podcast. I know you attribute it to the Lord, and you just started reading His Word, and all of a sudden everybody's tuning in. Like, people don't know that you had a lot of podcasts that no one listened to for a very long time. Were you shocked and stunned when you saw, like, you're looking at Apple Podcast and, like, this isn't just number one in religion. This is number one podcast on the planet. What was your emotional gut response to that?
I think this is honest because I'm looking back. I remember thinking, that's cool. That was about it. Because that
really?
Because at that point I think I was only maybe 60 episodes ahead. And I'm like, oh wow, it's doing really, really well on January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, whatever. I have 300 more of these to make. And so it's kind of that sense of like, oh, okay, people are listening to this. Okay, that's cool. I guess I gotta keep doing this, So
the first feeling was burden.
Well, I think first feeling was like, oh, cool, neat. And then it was like, oh shoot. so maybe the second feeling was burden.
Okay. My first thought was, praise God. Like, I can't believe there's this many good people.
Yeah.
Like, you're looking at the news, I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah.
Because there's some people who are jumping from barely interested to deeper Catholic, and they're using this as their stepping point. Mm-hmm. I want to read the Bible in a year, right? Just really get into this, see what it's got to offer. But then there's a lot of people who are so devout that they'll listen to Leviticus every day for a month. And I'm thinking, I just didn't know there were that many good people in this world, and it was really uplifting. My second thought was, you got the number one podcast, which is going to put you in the top 10 of the devil's hit list. And the evil one wants you to fall so bad, right? Because it would, first because he hates you, hates all of us, right? He'd want you to wear just like, he would turn all the success into these soiled rags that you have to carry around the rest of your life. Right. But then he wants to hurt and scandalize millions of people.
Yeah.
Right. So you're on the hit list. How have you experienced that? Have you experienced a pressure of like, dude, I got to up my prayer game?
Right.
Or have you just kind of just stayed busy and like nothing's really changed on that front?
I would say maybe the second more along those lines. There's always seemed to be the stakes have always been high. Now they're higher, but
you've always felt the stakes high since priesthood?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even just when I first came to the Lord, it was a matter of my first encounter with Jesus that just changed my life was I first encountered my own sin. It was this awareness of my own sin, like, oh my goodness, I need a savior, and I need to go to confession, I need prayer. And so, like, I think it was, I would say maybe, and I don't want to overstate it, but I think my whole life has been marked by, we're walking this thin wire, like we're walking this tightrope of grace, and at any moment, eternity is hanging in the balance. I mean, then that's always been kind of the sense. And so now, the stakes are higher, and I would say that I don't want to ever be responsible for anyone's turning away from the Lord, but that's always been kind of the case. It's always been I think I've always felt that.
Praise God.
I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe that's why the Lord picked you for what you're doing.
Maybe I don't.
I got to say this to everybody who's watching this. You matter so infinitely to God. Like, we think, Father Schmitz matters or Pope Francis matters. No. Like, from the eternal point of view, like the entire universe will fade away, stars will go out, you'll still be around.
Yeah.
Like the devil wants you to be separated from God forever, and that's like his big win.
Yeah.
So there's a lot on the line, and then there's the impact on the line. I love thinking about how the second judgment has to happen. Like, you're immediately judged, and at the end of time, because you don't even see the ripple effect of your life for good or ill until it's all over.
Yeah.
Till all of humanity, and then you see this big ripple going out, right? What's your prayer life like? Not just to keep you close to the Lord, but to keep you safe. Frankly, how much do you pray?
That is, it's so interesting. Maybe let's go back to this, if you don't mind, to the second judgment.
Yeah.
But the final judgment. That is, I think for a lot of people, like you mentioned, at the end of time, the whole story will have been told, right? And so we will know the consequences of our catechism talks about this. We'll know the consequences of our actions to the fullest extent. So as you said, both our good actions that radiated throughout history, and also our sins that radiated throughout history. And
they radiate. It's like it's just something hitting a still lake, and
we'll know the full. Yeah. We'll know the full story, and also will be fully known. So that sense of all the ways. I mean, and sometimes people have this tendency or temptation to either be like, I do not look forward to that, like that sense of like, this is gonna be a time of great shame, Or they'd be like, well, that'd be a great time of great pride. All the good, you could see all the good we did. And yet at the same time, it'll be a time of truth, which means I think humility. So there won't be any room for shame because these are all the things. This is all the truth. This is the truth about me. And here's how God worked his grace through that. Also, there's no room for pride because I did that and people were helped. But I also know the full extent to which I was helped. So that full truth of, oh man, I walked in continual need of God's grace, and it was there continually. Wow. And so I reflect on the final judgment a lot. You do, because there's no room for shame, because of the fact that we recognize the need for grace, and no room for pride because of the fact that we needed grace.
I love that you reflect on the final judgment a lot.
Yeah.
I think of the capuchins who would work with a skull, and it wasn't a plastic one because back then they didn't have plastic. It was like a skull on their desk to remind them. I got my Jesus prayer beads, little skulls on them. Just nice. thinking of the end and the priorities, staying in the line.
Wow.
So how much do you pray every day?
So we have every morning I'll get up about 4:00 or so and then work out, and then we have a holy hour with.
You work out at 4?
We start working out at 4:55. So I got to get ready and work out, and then come back and.
It's a tough time of day to work out.
It is. I know.
I get pukey if I work out.
Get it over with. So that's good. Actually, no. To work out with having eaten something, I'm like, this is I feel so weird. Come back, shower, whatever, get some work done, and then we meet with our focus missionaries and staff, and whatever students will want to join us. So we have a holy hour from about 7:50 or so until about 9:00, and so that's a 1 hour holy hour, and then we have adoration all day in our little garage.
Wow!
So all the students, they sign up for a 30-minute slot and come over. It's awesome, and so we have that time of a holy hour, and then mass every day, obviously. But the one thing I've noticed is that, and of course, a prayer throughout the day, you have liturgy of the hours and whatnot. But the one thing I've noticed is when it comes to intimacy with Jesus, that just is basic. Like if I don't have the holy hour in mass, things are really, really wrong. But for that sense of intimacy with the Lord, what also has to happen is the last 30 minutes of the day have to be back in the chapel, because then. Here's confession this is like all confession. Because a lot of that time in prayer and reflection in the morning is like looking at the readings, praying engaging with things on kind of working them out, talking with the Lord, and working them out, talking with the Lord. But at night, it's just go in there, no distractions. We're not working on anything. There's an idea. That's not why we're here. We're just here to be with Him.
Wow.
And those last 30 minutes of the day are. I know that's the metric. If they're not there, okay, we're sustaining.
You start tanking,
and we're just we're getting by. You're a Christian and you're doing the thing. But if I have those, and it's Jesus and I are deep. The relationship is deepening, and again, it's become over the last maybe 5 to 7 years. That's become the sign of are you doing okay, or are you just doing okay? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so your holy hour in the morning, your mass, your holy half hour at the end of the day, and that's the key one. Mm-hmm. When you talk, are you just talking to the Lord about what's on your heart? If someone's listening thinking I can listen to the Bible in a year, but how do I talk to Jesus like Father Mike?
So interesting, because a lot of my prayers are the prayer the church has asked me to pray. So I pray the Mass because the church has asked me to pray the Mass, and obviously I love it. Pray the Liturgy of the Hours 5 times a day because the church has asked me to pray the Liturgy of the Hours 5 times a day. So we're doing this. We do that in a unique way with our missionaries in the morning. So we'll have a half hour of just silence. And I'll tell you about that in a second. But the second half hour, 20 minutes, is we pray the Liturgy of the Hours together.
Beautiful.
But if you pray morning prayer, have you ever?
Oh yeah, every day.
So we'll do this where at the end of each psalm or canticle, we stop, and I invite if there's a word or phrase, just share that out loud from the because also you just go through it, and keep going
That's
through,
cool.
And so then everyone's saying mercy, or God is with us, or enter into your sanctuary, Lord.
Wow.
And so everyone gets to share out loud a little bit.
Teach them to just listen to the Lord speak as they pray.
Or else we just out one another. And then after the reading in the morning prayer, I'll stand up and read the gospel for that day's mass.
Yeah.
And everyone sits down. And then, does anyone volunteer to share what have you been praying about that first half of our time together, like that silent time? And this for 3 reasons. One reason I say is this is not to inspire anyone, this is not to teach anyone, so there's no pressure.
Yeah.
But it's a reminder to all of us that in those 30 minutes of silence, we're not just hanging out, we're not just sitting there, kind of waiting. We're meant to be actively praying, talking with the Lord, listening to his voice. Secondly, is because sometimes if you were to say, I was praying the sorrowful mysteries this morning, and I really just reflected on, the crowning with thorns there was no need for that. That was just cruelty. And like, oh, wow, and that helps me. It's just, maybe you're not supposed to be inspiring, but that kind of inspires. It helps me. And the third reason is because I believe that healthy vulnerability breeds healthy community. And so if we're in this room and we're praying together on a regular basis, and I say, this was my prayer this morning, well then, hopefully in an appropriate way, I've kind of opened my heart. And so, I look for 3 volunteers, and if anyone else wants to say anything, they can. And then we go back to the or pray the canticle and then the intercessions and conclude and everything. So that's beautiful. That time. I just think it's trying to teach each other how to pray.
Who's your community with? Who's your vulnerability with? Like who's holding you accountable if you're not doing that kind of thing, where you're confessing to your brother priests? And does your success does it make it a little harder to find people to just be normal with?
Right. I would say I have a priest fraternity, like a little group of 6 of us in our diocese.
Awesome.
And we get together once a month, once every 6 weeks, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
We'll come together for a holy hour. We'll have lunch. We'll check in, and it's kind of according to a certain, like, what's going on in your life, what's happening. One of the things that's really, really helpful is you mentioned. So, it could be really easy to feel isolated.
Yeah.
Especially, you go to Seek or go to some other kind of big conference where there's a bunch of priests, and I'm like, oh, Father Mike, you're the guy to talk about this. I just, walking into a room of priests, sometimes I just feel so uncomfortable in the sense that, like, what are they thinking? Are they like, everyone's wanting to talk to him, but he's no big deal. I'm like, I know I'm no big deal, but it's potentially isolating, right? It's really potentially just feeling like, just feeling uncomfortable. But I love, a couple of years ago, in our priest fraternity, one of the guys was like, hey, I was listening to one of your talks on the way here. I was like, oh, and he's like, no, it was great. He's like, we're all so proud of you. We're all just so grateful that,
yes.
I was in wherever, and they were like, oh, you're from Duluth, Father Mike Schmitz. And some of them are like, no, he knows me. But they're like, yeah, we're so proud of you. And so that is like, to be able to go to
that's beautiful,
like
brother.
Last week we had our priests conference, just the local diocesan priests. And, to feel like, oh no, I belong with these guys, and there's I've never gotten any sense of resentment or jealousy from my brother priests in this diocese.
That's awesome.
Because I'm the kind of person that would hurt me more than anything.
Yeah.
I think that's why I'm like, as I said, if I go to a conference and the priests are kind of standoffish, it really hurts.
Yeah.
But I haven't experienced that a lot. I've
Praise
experienced
the Lord.
mostly guys who just are like, hey buddy, praying for you. Kind of like you're saying, like, hey, I know you're under some attack or whatever, or hey, my parishioners really love what you're doing, so keep it up. You help me out. And that, again, I just tell you, that's maybe the most, something that really hurts is when there's that division, where I feel like a priest will look at me and say, you're not one of us. And so when it happens, that they're like, no, you are, and we're proud of you, and you're helping us out.
And it's not like you're one of us because we're overlooking the good things you've done. You're one of us, and we're so proud of you.
Yeah.
Like that's my dearest friends. Like any degree of success will bring that out of people, right? I've heard that the crabs, you don't have to put a lid on a bunch of crabs, because they'll tear each other down as soon as they start reaching the top. But yeah, I'll never forget one time I got off the stage and Pat Lencioni, I've always looked up to Pat. And I have no problem saying he's one of my best friends. I look up to him. I get off the stage, he's beaming. He's like, I'm so proud of you. You just spoke way better than I could. It's like, I like looking at your gifts as if I accomplished them. It's like, this is a true brother.
Yeah.
There's no weirdness, there's no jealousy. But I think one of the reasons is it's tough for people to play that balancing act is because our impact in ministry is tied to who we are.
Yeah.
And I've heard people say, like, we don't need more Catholic rock stars. It's like, dude, shut up. Really, we've always had Catholic, if you want to call it rock stars. I don't consider myself, you would never consider yourself that, but we always had itinerant preachers who try to be as effective as possible for the Lord. And the message is always tied to the messenger. Be imitators of me as I am of Christ, St. Paul said. And I know one of the this might not make you comfortable, but one of the reasons people listen to you is not just because of what you're saying. It's because of how God has communicated through who you are. There's an inner vitality that people want. So they want to hang out with it. and it's so much better for them to hit play on that instead of something stupid like.
I hope so. Yeah.
Like I want the energy and life that comes out of that guy just to be on my car radio instead of something different. You know,
well, and it's interesting too because there's not just as many, but there's also people who will say like, "Oh, you're so annoying." Or the
commentary, like, gee, thanks. You know the comment I get sometimes. You smile too much. For me, I smile because you actually had the time to find our contact thing on reallifecatholic.com and tell me I smile too much. Like, that's are you so serious?
Funny. Yeah. I got an email yesterday, I think, from a guy who had said, when I came across your stuff, you're so annoying. And I just was really bothered by you.
Thanks for letting me know.
And but then it was like, but I started listening and realized, oh, there's some things that could help me. Well, that's good. That's great news. But I got this from a student. That? Was it last year? One of our students. He was just graduating. No, he's in grad school now. He's like, oh yeah, Father Mike. When I first met you, I couldn't stand you. I was like, thanks, bro. And he just like, no, that's all he wanted to say. Oh. I'm like, what? And so I'm just like, okay, thanks, man.
Well, I've always liked you, just so you know.
And then a week later, he was like, oh, someone who was listening said that was mean of me to say. And I was like, well.
Because it was.
He said, but I meant like, but now we're friends. That's I thought that was just assumed. Thank you.
You're not very emotionally intelligent, but I love you anyway. Hey, if you guys want, Missionaries Joy, if you want to comment any questions at all, we'll comment on them. And Rhiannon, thank you so much for saying both of you inspire everything. Everything y'all do inspires me. Hey, I love you. You guys inspire us. When it comes to that thing about you that inspires people, right? I know that so there's the big things the devil wants to really bring you down, and you have safeguards in place. You have accountability. You have your family to hang out with. You have your 2.5 hours of praying a day and a little bit of self-care, right? But then there's the smaller battles, which I think are no less significant. That the devil wants to erode the thing that is in you that draws people to God through you. And that might have come naturally throughout your life, but there comes times where that's under attack because the devil hates that part of you. Like I just think of, if I have a charism, it's joy, for instance, right? And I think people are drawn to that, and it was under attack, but then it made me realize, oh wait, I didn't even realize that was a thing.
Yeah.
Now I got to be intentional about protecting the thing, protecting the charism. And I have this inner nemesis that wants to eat that away. You know, it's like here's the Chris that doesn't come out when I'm in front of a camera, and I think it's like anxious Chris. You know, like I have this energy, joy Chris, and then like Chris that's like freaking out about everything. I don't know if you thought about this before, but who's the nemesis that you fight? Who's the Father Mike that no one wants to see?
That's crazy. I haven't thought of that. That's a really profound question. I don't know. I don't know offhand.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know. Well, because part of it is maybe it's lack of self-knowledge. Because the question of what is it that is. So here's what I always have thought.
What attacks that inner vitality the most?
Well, one of the things I've always thought is, here is a gift. My bishop had shared this with me. I was really moved by it. He said something along the lines of, actually it was really funny. He's from Green Bay. We accept him. Yeah. It's okay. He's from Wisconsin, but it's fine. But he had said when the catechism started coming out, he said, man, I'm listening. I'm like, oh shoot, you have? He's like, yeah. And I have to ask you a question. He said, how the hell do you know all that stuff? And I was like, oh, Bishop, I've never heard you talk like this. And but I was like, oh, thank you. I don't know what to respond. I was like, I don't know. Here it is. And then just the acknowledgement of, I'm like, Bishop, I know. I'm not even the smartest priest in our diocese. Like there's priests in our diocese who are so genius smart. I mean, just so intelligent, not just in the world, because they are in the world. And I even named a couple of them are like, well, Father so-and-so and Father so-and-so, they're way smarter than me. And he said, yeah, I mean, maybe. He said, but your gift is you have the ability to help it make sense and to make it so it's understandable for people. And I was like, oh, I really appreciate that, because that's been something that I've tried to do my whole life. So ever since I encountered C.S. Lewis, I just have been so grateful for his ability to take complex ideas and make them so not only accessible but compelling. And so that's always been my goal. So since I listened to,
so that's a gift. Take complex things and make them accessible, but also attractive, because you have a life about you as you talk about them.
I can see that.
And that signals to people, hey, this isn't boring.
Yeah.
Like, this is what you're made for. Like, let's get excited about
that. Right. So it's compelling, right? It's accessible and compelling. So maybe that's part of it.
Yeah.
Father Leo
Pedaling Hug.
Who's just
Pedaling Hug.
He is a guy. He's great.
Yeah, he's amazing.
And he was like, Mike. Yeah, I can't do an impression of him, but Mike, this is your brand. Like, what? He's like, no, that's fine. You have a brand. Get over it. I was like, I'm not comfortable with that term, Father.
No, here
he's like, you say hard things, but you say them with a smile. I was like, well, that's not a bad brand. Okay.
That's a good brand.
I was like, that's all right.
And you have to defend that smile.
I have to, yeah.
And it will always be under attack.
I have to explain it.
And keep it going, man. Because
because sometimes people, I think sometimes people take, like your joy.
Yeah.
They can take it for being shallow.
Yeah.
Like they can take the you're like, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be alive for like, you haven't lived life. Like you haven't been through the ringer. You haven't experienced.
Yeah, there's the presumption that you've never suffered.
Yeah. Because
that's why you're smiling.
Yep. And
because the Lord tells us the only way to have real joy is to never have suffered.
Mm-hmm. And exactly. and so I think that that's the danger of being misunderstood. But that's part of, the litany of humility is just like that sense of like, yeah, I'm going to be misunderstood.
Just accept it.
But you can't let that stop us. Yeah. So.
Well, dude, I just want to thank you so much for just being who you are, and I just thanks for letting me dig into these questions about.
I'm gonna on the drive back. What is my thing? What's my nemesis? I don't know,
man. But really, I'm so inspired by just your integrity as a human being. The way you live your life protects the thing that people love about you. And I just want you to know, like, I'm praying for you, and my people who are watching are praying for you. Because we want more than inspiration from the Lord, but we also want your good. And I'm proud of you, man. And we're all proud of you and cheering you on, dude.
So you know Philip Neri?
Yeah.
I think he had this prayer every morning he would pray, where he would say, watch out for Philip today, Lord. Because if you give him the chance, he will betray you. And I just, I carry that with me like all the time. I just have that knowledge all the time. So, I like C.S. Lewis, never had anything but a mercenary heart, being willing to give it to the highest bidder. And so that knowledge of just like, okay,
we're all weak.
Yeah. So God, help me.
And I want to encourage you too, Missionaries of Joy, and everybody who's watching. I love how St. Thérèse said that the great saints were like eagles soaring, but I'm just a little bird. But I have an eagle's heart, she said, But she probably describe you that way, or probably does. It's like, here's a great missionary, and reaching so many people, more people than anybody's reached through digital ministry, or almost anybody. Fulton Sheen's got us all beat.
Yeah.
But she'd look at you and say that, and yet she didn't say, well, so therefore I'm not important.
Yeah.
Her little way was to claim like, no, there's an equal importance here. So if you're watching, you're like, well, I want to make a difference for the Lord, but I don't have a podcast. I'm doing this, that, and the other thing, or maybe I tried the podcast thing and it hasn't worked, or whatever. So I don't matter. No. You're so infinitely important. Could you say something to that person who's thinking that?
Absolutely.
And is this his camera? Right there. Just say right to that camera.
No, I'm really grateful. Thanks, Chris, for this opportunity, because regularly people will, if I meet them, they'll say something like, hey, thank you for the videos you make, or for whatever the thing is. I play them in my, I teach a class at the Catholic Church, or I teach religious ed, or I play them for my kids, or whatever the thing is. And a lot of times that's what they say. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I apologize. And they're like, no, thank you. But the response of my heart is thank you. Because the reality is your students, your children, the ones in your class, they would never hear that video or come into contact with whatever it is you thought was valuable that I had made if it wasn't for you. You're that bridge, and also you have the harder job, because we recognize that, I say this again and again, is that the gospel, yes, sometimes people get a chance to proclaim the gospel through a podcast, through a microphone, through the stage, but if we're really going to spread the gospel, it will happen through family and friendship. That's how it's going to happen. And so here you are doing the hard work of relationship. I get to sit in my room and sit in front of a camera and go, record, stop, blah, 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 You have to do the hard work of being in a relationship with people who are hard to love sometimes, who don't want you to love them sometimes, who want to run away, and you have to chase them down. You're the ones going after the lost sheep again and again and again. And so just please be encouraged by the fact that you might not have a podcast, you might not have whatever the thing is, but you do have a heart. And with that heart, like, was it Saint Oh,
Chiara Badano.
I
still have my heart. With that I can love.
With that I can always love. And that's what you're doing. So thank you, because without you, this message, Chris's message, mine, the gospel, it would not be able to reach the people that it reaches because of you. And so
I just got chills.
You make the difference. You matter.
If everybody was in full-time ministry, no one would hear the gospel.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, and there's an incredible beauty. I love thinking of Our Lady. Her praise of God was, my soul magnifies the Lord. Like, she was aware of the beauty she had to bring of God within her specifically.
Yeah.
So whatever that is for you, guard it, defend it, rejoice in it. It's not proud. And learn to rejoice in others. You can see it in yourself. You can look at someone else and say, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
And encourage that beauty. I think of the saints as stained glass windows, you know? Like, this might be heretical, but I maybe it is, maybe it's not. But like, literally, heaven will be more beautiful because of the light of God shining through these people than it would be had he not created these saints. And it was just him. And that sounds heretical, because how could you add to the beauty of God? And yet he lets us.
He lets us, yeah. Well, I'm struck. So I said this. There was been a mass last weekend. Just you know how sometimes, and this is for the missionaries of joy and everyone, sometimes it can feel like prayer is a burden. Sometimes it can feel like going to mass is a burden, even though I know this is great, I know this is good for me. It can sometimes feel like a burden. But if we paused and reflected on why we have to, quote unquote, have to go to mass, is because for whatever reason it matters to God. Whether we show up or not. Like, it matters to God if you are at mass and you worship him, or if you choose, like, I'm not going to go to mass, I'm not going to worship him. And like, how crazy is that? That here's the God of the universe who has everything, he needs nothing, but it matters to him whether or not we say that prayer, take that time, show up for mass. Isn't that crazy? And so that burden is, that's a burden. Sometimes I need to choose this instead of all those other things. But But it's a burden that comes from the honor that God is bestowing upon us by saying, it matters to me that you pray. It matters to me that you worship. It matters to me that you share the gospel.
Praise God.
Incredible.
I think that's a central thing that comes out through all your preaching. You matter to God.
That's it.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, share this with everybody you know, be an evangelist. And if you're not a missionary of joy yet, jump in off the sidelines, go to reallifecatholic.com and become a monthly supporter. That's what makes all this happen. See you next time. And thank you so much, man.
Absolutely.
I just love you.
Thanks. Love you too.